Welcome to Fire Service Court Radio. My name is Brad Pinsky, and I am today's host of our live from FDIC show of Fire Service Court Radio. And with me today is the Honorable John Murphy and the most infamous, esteemed, and wanted in 4 states, Curt Varone. Not with us today is Chip Comstock, and we're sure he is watching and taking copious notes and ready to call in. And we want to thank I think we hit 80 million viewers last week of our show, 80, maybe 90 million. And welcome everybody. But we are today, again, if you haven't caught our show before, we bring you the hottest, toughest, most challenging and interesting legal issues. And normally what we do at FDIC, other than say hi to everybody, is kind of talk about, what the issues have been. And, this one thing comes to mind that was, throughout almost all of our radio shows is that thing called COVID. And we had so many good topics on that. If you guys want to chime in what you liked about it, whether it was mandatory vaccines, can you do that? Can you test? Can you tell people? Can you give time off? What do you do? So have we come any farther with any answers?
Well, I think we're waiting a lot for the states to take action. I think the issue of mandatory immunizations was something I discussed in my class yesterday. And people are pretty interested in trying to figure out how they're going to create a policy if mandatory vaccines become a real deal. And we talked about some old case law. So 1902, Jacobson versus somebody in Massachusetts.
Dead guy. Yeah.
And a smallpox outbreak, and he didn't want to get the smallpox inoculation, and went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supremes ruled the fact that apparently the states can mandate vaccinations or inoculations during sort of a pandemic event. And so, and today we don't see smallpox as one of the big pandemics. But I remember as a kid in the 50s, and I'm dating myself, we got polio shots. Polio was a big deal. And so I went to a parochial school. The nuns gave the shot, which is probably the highlight of their day.
Yeah, right.
Because none of them were nurses, but they inflicted pain on us anyway. But the second round, you had 2 shots. The other one, the drops are on a sugar cube. So you took the sugar cube, which is really nice. Yeah. And then there's been measles outbreaks. There's been rules that mandate that children be immunized when they go to school. And now we're seeing in our pandemic, what's the logical next step other than masking and having to prove that you've had the vaccination. And I think everybody's waiting. And so the class was, what do we do? And so, the answer was be prepared for mandatory because we're seeing it like on Methodist Hospital in Texas. They mandated that all nurses get the COVID vaccine, and there was a big pushback. And so the question is, if I'm in a union, and maybe you can speak to that, or am I a volunteer who's an at-will employee? And so, do at-will employees have any rights? Not a hell of a lot, but they got a few. And then if you're in a bargaining environment, is there the necessary or the need to bargain the impact on, the membership? So it's coming down the road. I think we need to be well prepared for it. I think organizations need to do their homework and figure it out and get inoculated or immunized. That's the simple stuff.
That's my bottom line is, get the vaccine. I've had a couple of people reach out to me with that question. Can they make us? And I go through all the legal, explanations and everything. And at the end of it, I say, if you were my son, I would wait till you fell asleep, go up into your bedroom and give you the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And they all laugh. They laugh, so, but the issue of mandatory, I don't know if I missed I flew in late yesterday afternoon, so I missed your discussion, but the question of mandatory is really, what exactly is mandatory? Now, for example, is mandatory physically hold somebody down and give them a shot without their permission? Is that mandatory? Mm-hmm. Or is mandatory attaching maybe some sort of economic connection to it so that you can't work here? We're going to keep you, you're not going to be fired, right, but you can't come to work. Is that making it mandatory? And the regulations, I know we talked about this on one of our shows, but
yeah, the courts came down on the other side as I did.
Well, but here's the thing. The FDA has granted permission for Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson for an experimental use. And the regulations specifically say that you can't make an experimental.
Despite what at
Prove.
least 2 courts have said,
It's
you can't.
no, well, it gets back to what is mandatory, but the regulations say you cannot make it mandatory. Okay, now, what, again, going back to my question is, what is mandatory? Is mandatory that the police are gonna come in, hold you down while a nurse
Or you just can't
administers
show up
that?
to work.
Is that, or can an employer say, okay, we're not gonna make it mandatory, but if you wanna come to work, you have to. Is that mandatory? And that's where I think the courts are coming in. And I think because of just how serious the COVID thing is,
Right.
the courts are coming down saying, no, you can't have a group of thugs, police officers, whatever, hold somebody down and give it to them against their will,
But you can keep them from work.
but you can. And that's, I think,
Yeah, that was
the
the way
interpretation.
when we first did it, I said, there's no way a court, right? I was on the opposite side. No way a court is going to say you cannot have a job. We're going to terminate you if you don't, or whatever, or deny you work hours if you don't get the vaccine when it's experimental. I said, once it's, clearly once it's approved, I think they can, but as an experimental vaccine. And now it's, unfortunately the government, I'm not trying to make this Republican Democrat, the government changes the message every day, right? So people are now saying, well, if I have to wear a mask, why do I need to be vaccinated? And so the thing that's come up with a lot of my clients is, well, if they don't want to be vaccinated, can we tell them to wear a mask? I said, absolutely, you can tell them to wear a mask. What they wear in your environment, you absolutely control. So I said, tell them 24/7 they'll wear, or whatever their hours, they'll wear a mask on all the calls in the hospital, at the firehouse, while they're eating, they'll distance, go back to that. I just think there's an alternative. So where I was a little skeptical that we'd mandate it is, well, wait a minute, but if masks are just as acceptable, and now my point is more acceptable, because they're saying, hey, even if you're vaccinated, you need to wear a mask, then why can't the employer say either or? Mask or vaccine, you choose.
Well, I think a lot of employers are doing that, but I got a couple of emails over the last month on the same issue, different departments doing the same thing, which kind of, when that happens and they're not the same state, so whether they all went to the same conference or whatever, and they came home with this, but the department is telling the firefighters, you don't have to, we're not going to make you get the vaccine, but if you get the vaccine and you get COVID, you can use your sick leave for that. But if you don't get the vaccine, you cannot use your sick leave for that.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I know.
Wow.
And the question is,
FMLA.
can the city do that? And I know where I come from, certainly that's going to have to be bargained,
Right,
in a
exactly.
collective bar, that's going to have to be bargained. There may
Unions
be,
are not giving that up.
no, there may
There's
be
no way.
case law, on what you can use sick leave for. And also, these departments, so these are in right to work states and very anti-labor types of environments. But workers' comp also is going to play a role, so that if you can show that you got the exposure at work, the employer, their hands are tied in terms of denying you the right to workers'
Right,
comp.
they have
That's
that
by,
presumptive-
that's by state law.
Presumptive illness.
And some
you know.
states do
Right,
as
they
well,
do,
but
yeah.
but even if not, if you can show that you got the exposure at work, the workers' comp law is going to trump anything that the employer tries to
Right.
put in there to try to. And I think what the employers are doing is they're trying to encourage
Of course.
folks to get the
They
vaccine.
want people
Well,
back in the office, I think. I mean,
We're healthcare workers. I mean, if you take a look at the predominant calls, we're EMS focused with some fires on the side. So we're, for all intents and purposes, we're healthcare workers. So, and I know that may not change the dynamic of the conversation,
Yeah.
but if they mandate healthcare workers get COVID, then are we classified as a licensed paramedic or a certified EMT or a first responder that has medical licensure or certificates? Then do we fall into that, we're the medical worker and you're required to get it?
well, have you looked, have you
category.
seen the new, and I hate them because I'm sick of COVID already, but have you seen the not new, but last month, OSHA COVID healthcare worker setting requirements, regulations? They clearly take into account ambulance and responding to medical
Yes.
scenes. And, so my fire client's like, do we have to comply? And I'm like, I don't want to tell you that you have to comply because I'm so sick of it. But, if you run first response EMS, I don't care whether you're an ambulance or not, I think you have to comply. And so somebody says, what does that mean? I said, the way I read the regs, you're going back to wearing masks everywhere.
Mhm.
And they're like, we're not doing that. I said, I don't want to tell you to do that.
I'm
you
on
know,
the
'cause I'm
phone. I
sick of
don't,
it.
you're not coughing on me.
Right. No, but but that's what the regs say. The regs put all EMTs, not just in the way I read it, and I think the way my state's going to read it, because I've been in contact communication with them, trading bad opinions. And they're like, look, not only in the ambulance, not only at the hospital, not only while deconning, but everywhere, if you're an ambulance service, you always are going back to masks. I said, that's just not going to happen. I don't know what OSHA's thinking. People are not, right? I just don't see it.
Well, OSHA doesn't move very quickly, so they probably started that guidance.
Oh, it was under
months-
Trump, and Trump said no.
But then, they can't like turn on a dime. The
No,
federal government, the
right,
bureaucracy
right.
can't. So their guidance may be months
It was
in
months
arrears.
behind.
And maybe months ago, think about where we were 6 months ago. The
Right.
vaccines were just starting to come out.
Right. And it was just in the Federal Register, but they.
That's even worse because not worse.
Right.
I don't mean
No,
it's
your
worse.
comment
It's
section,
just
but-
it's just they're going to be
Right, they're way behind.
lagging. They're going
Right.
to be lagging behind time wise.
But Trump didn't want them out. Biden released them. You're right. It's months behind, but it's like we just went backwards, although maybe not, because now you got to wear a mask again. So
Well, I
who
think
knows
we
where
need to
are.
be smarter than a regulation. We need to be
Yeah.
the regulation.
Yeah.
Understand how problematic it is for our service and what impact it has on Americans and, people around the world, not getting that expansive, but I think departments need to be proactive in this thing and then make the right decisions with the right education and knowledge about the impacts, first of all.
Mhm.
And then, how about if they get sick, if they get the injection, right? From the injection,
Right.
or they get the injection and then they get sick. And so, there's a lot of contingencies there. And I think people need to be smart.
Did you
in
see what
policy.
happened? A lot of states have now made COVID a disability, right? I don't know why they had to classify it, but they specifically classified COVID as a disability. Well, remember, you can't discriminate against somebody based on the appearance of having a disability. So the appearance of having COVID is what? A cough, right? So you now have all these employer protections as if you had a disability. They can't treat you differently. They have to reasonably accommodate you. What is reasonably accommodating COVID? And when they made it a disability, I'm like, you just totally messed up this issue. And it's a great issue. I think you're going to see it on the forefront. But how do you reasonably accommodate COVID? Go home, and for how long, and we'll pay you, which I think is.
We had an issue even in my department where we had one member, this was back probably about a year ago. So think about where we were a year ago, maybe even a little earlier. But we had one of our firefighters worked on an ambulance, on a private ambulance. And some of the other firefighters were uncomfortable being in the same room with them, and you play that out in the workplace where you have 2 or 3 employees that don't feel comfortable working with somebody who's a firefighter, and you can see the discrimination, the potential for that. So, but certainly that's going to complicate a lot of what we're talking about here. States that do that.
So let me change the topic for once.
All right,
because-
all right,
Do
let's
one
get-
case,
oh, sure.
one case. In Texas, most recently, a Texas firefighter took leave because he claimed to have COVID and his wife had COVID. And so they're on vacation. He got busted for it and it has to repay the organization all the money.
He's facing felony theft.
Oh, I know.
felony
Plus,
theft
Yeah,
charge.
yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
plus. So
Yeah.
the word of the wise is don't take vacation because you're using COVID as an excuse to go with your wife to the
Yeah.
Caribbean.
But it is employee theft. Or
It
theft
is,
of
it's
time, no
theft.
question.
And, I blogged about that, not that long ago, that case, and there was some questions on it. Prosecutors don't want to take those kind of cases
Mhm.
because once prosecutors start taking sick leave abuse cases, they would do nothing but prosecute sick leave abuse. Everybody who wants to fire somebody would go to the prosecutor and want them, somebody fired for sick leave. And so it would
Just let them challenge, they were fired for the right cause.
Right,
or
so
not.
the better solution to that is, discipline, internal discipline, but is it a crime? Yes, it is. It's obtaining money under false pretenses.
For a
If
public
it's-
employer.
Yeah, well, for anybody, it could
Yeah, I
be,
suppose so.
it's
You're right.
obtaining money under false pretenses. Now, if you work in 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven would love not to have to, deal with it. They just turn it over to the police, but the police, they would be overwhelmed with dealing with that. So point being, the question that got posed to me, is it a crime? It absolutely
course
is. Assuming that the facts are what was alleged, it is a crime, but do most prosecutors want to take a case like that? They don't.
No, the ones
They
you
don't.
see, like in our area, he was the City of Syracuse's public information officer. And this guy, anytime, day or night, he was always there. Great guy. And I met him 3 times and he remembers my name every time, right? And this guy's a sharp guy. And he gets convicted of felony. He stole after he left his job with City of Syracuse, went to work for an assemblyman or something like that. He gets convicted of stealing time that said he was one place while he was still being paid, but he was getting paid for another place. So that's the one where you normally see those, right? They didn't sign out on the police job, and I'm over here doing a security detail. So that, and they do, especially when it's a public official, I think they prosecute those. So I wanted to switch topics because something, and Curt knows, something happening in New York is so idyllic now of cancel culture. And I want to handle the suit. I think the Fire Service Court lawyer should handle the suit, and it involves our governor. But on the governor, no, not
Is he still the
governor? Yeah,
Still
he ain't quitting.
Last I knew.
Yeah. But he just signed 6 bills. I got pushed through into law, so that was good. That was hopefully his last act. But nonetheless, so the cancel culture Assembly and Senate in New York State, which is very, very liberal right now. They have 2/3 liberal majority. They have on the governor's desk a bill that says no municipality, including a fire department, can allow the displaying of symbols of hate, including flags, right? And including the Confederate flag as one of many examples, as an example. So I think it is such a good, right? It's showing what's coming down the pike, New York starting it. But the free speech issue, what is a symbol of hate? What a void for vagueness. And I've been using it when I teach at like the fire academy. I teach the fire officer 3 course. Okay, well, if you have a piss on Ford, Calvin and Hobbes sticker on your helmet, if you have a Confederate flag, which is in the parking lot, if you have a Irish flag, or you gave me an example of the Bills hate the Jets, type thing. Like, what is hate?
Do the Bills hate the Jets?
No.
I thought everybody hates the Patriots, but
everyone hates, right? No question, but good for them.
Or the Red Sox.
So, but I think it's a great testament to where we are of what we're seeing, and speech issues.
I hope it's not where we're going, man. I hope it's not where we're going. I hope people take a step back and say, now, wait a minute, if we say that that's hate speech, then what about some of the other symbols that go on the other side of the political spectrum?
Right.
Because if one thing can be hate speech, the polar opposite can be hate speech.
Well,
so
Black Lives Matter, right? Which some people see as hate, but then the All Lives Matter response, a lot of people see as a hateful response.
And who gets to choose what's hate and what's not? And that's I think that's destined to be struck down, hopefully by the Supreme Court, if it gets that.
I think it should be us. I think we should sue it out, because I think it's but I'm having trouble with fire departments because they're saying, well, what do we do? I said, what's displaying? What is it on a helmet? Is it in a locker? Is it in your car in the parking lot?
To some people, the American flag is hateful, which I think is a horrible.
Right.
I think it's, if that's what you really feel, you probably are in the wrong country. And if you think there's some other
Probably shouldn't be
country,
in the Olympics.
I really think if you think there's some other country that is going to treat you better,
Right,
I
more
mean,
power.
but whatever. But I mean, I think if you think of the American flag as hateful, so now you can't display the American flag because, where do we go from there?
Right. Well, and that's I guess my point is, how do you advise clients if that gets signed? I really do. I want to take it up because I think it is unconstitutional. And I just think we're regulating emotions and feelings now. It's
Well, it becomes a subjective, not objective standard, I think. And so if you're in a department and you got flags and stickers and all those sorts of things, and then who's going to make the determination that it's hate speech?
Right.
Because, if I have an Irish flag on my helmet, I have an Irish heritage. And so is that my right to put my flag on my helmet while I'm working on the job?
but
If
the
I have-
Irish,
if I
they
have
were
a-
oppressive to someone
they've
else.
been
Someone
oppressed.
else, right? Yeah. Right,
They're
okay.
impressive to me.
Yeah.
If I have a swastika on my arm and I'm at work, is that hateful speech?
I'm pretty sure we can all accept the fact that the swastika, right, is
Right,
is
but
a
I'm
symbol
using
of
that
hate.
as a-
I think
as an
there's
extreme.
certain ones that are, but again, you start to go down that road and, it gets,
Right.
you know,
And I
It
think
gets
that,
a
look,
lot of
that's where New York's
subjectivity.
going.
I think our forefathers really kind of thought this through when they developed our Constitution about free speech. And, just steer clear of those kinds of issues.
Right.
You know, you don't like what somebody said, that's fine. That's your right not to like it. It's their right to say it, and just
Right.
let it go. Be bigger than the issue, you know?
Right.
And then the question
Don't
is
get petty
flag
over it.
speech, right? So that as I'm looking at this, and I think it was Chip's the comment is like, well, is a flag speech, you know, even, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
Well,
I
apparently
think it
I would
is.
think it is.
Is
but
it protected
you know,
speech or not?
some
protected? When you
speeches-
burn the flag?
Some
that
speech is a little,
protected speech?
yeah,
It
and some
really is,
speech
yeah.
is a little ambiguous,
Right.
you know, and I know a lot of stuff in social media is ambiguous because you can share something because you like it. You
Right.
can share something because you're offended by it.
Right.
So just sharing something, and the same thing maybe with a flag too, that, you know, somebody's carrying the flag, that's speech. Okay, somebody's burning the flag, that's speech.
Right.
They're both speech, but they're the opposite.
When I
Yeah.
was chief, I had a department, so about 3 years ago, I had a career firefighter come to me, and the individual said that I'm offended because this individual has a Trump sticker on his helmet, and you should tell him to take it off. I said, well, A, we don't have a no sticker on helmet policy. So now you want me to see that the president of the United States name is, you know, a symbol of hate or racist or whatever. I'm like, you know, whatever feelings you may have against him, I don't think you could say, take the president of the United States hat, you know, in some sense, nothing's more
Well,
American. I mean,
I wonder how that same person would feel about the prior president and being ordered to take his name off the helmet. So, you know,
Right.
it's got to go both ways.
Right.
You know, it has to.
Dynamics,
So,
yeah.
well, and the firehouse, the reason I think that we get blessed with all these good issues is because the firehouse, one, not a shy place for discussion, right? And two, so many different people, so many individuals, representative of a lot of communities, a lot of backgrounds and faiths, and very opinionated. So this stuff brews and very big on rights, all right? So, you know, don't tread on me. So we get the benefit of
Even that
seeing-
offends somebody.
Yeah, we get the
That
benefit
flag.
of that. So
Yeah.
we're just slow to change. I'll throw out another topic. We've never talked about it, but I want it to be one of our shows. And I just it came up in my thing, and I got a call on it this morning, and I lectured on it, but and FDIC and other places haven't really spoken on it. But gender identity issues are coming to a firehouse near you. And every time I say this, I have somebody, like yesterday in my class, they raised their hand, or 2 days ago, whenever I spoke. I got a call on it this morning. And this morning's call was interesting because it's somebody who's transitioning from, I think, male to female or female to male, I forget which. But, you know, transgender individuals have a very high suicide rate. So the question was not just, normally I speak about transgender issues about the bathrooms and the bunk rooms and the changing rooms and which uniform and which physical and take it off your application. So that was all good, right? And it's a tough enough subject, but here they were talking about suicide, and that the individual has attempted suicide a number of times, and, you know, they're concerned, what do we do? And again, if you know the transgender community, you know that the suicide rate or attempted suicide rate is very high. Now you throw in being a firefighter, what do we do? How do we react? So it got me thinking, once and I'm going to leave the transgender issue, but I'm going to jump to a Dr. Beth issue, if we could, because it's such a timely topic, but the transgender issue we need to deal with. And that's a whole, I want to do a radio show on that. We'll talk about it, but now go to the question of the day, which was to me, we have somebody who we know is suicidal, has attempted suicide. Their doctor keeps giving them notes to come back to work. What do we do when we know somebody's suicidal? And look, fire chief suicide, firefighter suicide, I mean, it's very high. So what do we do as a legal matter when John comes to work and he's, you know, very depressed and is telling people he's thinking about suicide? Oh yeah, by all means, you know, head out to this trauma call. What's our advice to people?
It's dangerous. I've actually seen it weaponized. Okay, so that you have a firefighter, have a ranking officer in a department that maybe the department is looking to diminish their credibility. And they make a decision, we're going to send him out for psychological counseling. We think he may be suicidal. And they weaponize that to try to, you know, get that person no longer to be in contention for a promotion.
Oh, okay.
You know, so there's a flip side to that as well. And how do you strike that balance between getting somebody who needs help and not allowing it to be weaponized as part of, you know, some sort of a shenanigans to get somebody promoted that you want to get promoted, and eliminate somebody that you don't want to see promoted.
And do we, so again, for viewers, I mean, the two questions that come up, can you mandate counseling? And B, can you remove them from the job, going back to a parent disability, right? Parent mental illness or whatever. Can you remove them from the job to get evaluated? I mean, I think the answer to both of those is yes,
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking about the safety of the employee
maybe.
and the danger that they may be putting others in.
It was the
right?
term credible threat. It's a credible
Let's use
threat.
that.
What I think
Let's
there's
use
a
credible threat.
term, I think OSHA and the ADA, I don't think that's the right term, but there's a term and there's some parameters around that term that sort of allow you to do something ordinarily you wouldn't be authorized to do.
Right.
And so I think that's going to play a role, but then do you actually have objective criteria that this person needs to either go for counseling or, you can always offer the counseling. I think that's probably the better way to do it in a confidential way, get them the help.
Right. So channeling Dr. Beth, I think one of the things we need to, and I do that quite often. Hey, Beth, I'm talking about you. So, you need to make sure the playing field is level. So if you're going to do it for this person who may be transitioning as opposed to this female firefighter or male firefighter, you got to offer the same opportunities for everybody regardless. I think the other thing Beth and I have talked about, clients being sent for mandatory evaluation. And her comment was, well, what's the objective? What do you want?
Yeah.
And so she talks to the fire chief, and his fire chief said, well, we're really concerned about performance and suicidality and, their ability to do work, and, what should we do? We want you to do the evaluation. And she says, what do you expect me to report back to you? And then they go, well, we want to know if they're still qualified to be a firefighter. And she says, I'm not going to do that.
Right. Yeah, because her job is to treat the person, not
Right.
to
evaluate and
report.
diagnose.
Right.
And if the outcome
Yeah.
is,
And
I'm
then
sorry, you're
treatment.
removed
Sure.
from the job,
Yeah.
who's coming?
Right. And then
Right.
maybe take time off. Maybe, but could it be a voluntary leave of absence, or is it a sort of mandatory leave of absence
Gotta
with
be
pay
paid.
or administrative leave? I think any of those have to be with pay. The problem in our fire service is we have no secrets in the fire service, right? Anything that goes on, everybody knows about it like yesterday. And so, the issue of confidentiality is there is none. And so I think people that are in that sort of environment need to understand the confidentiality issue is not real. I mean, everybody's going to know because you're not there, right? And most people know that if you're in a transitional state, they're going to know that you're transitioning somehow, right? Either a friend of a friend or
It's
somebody
actually,
posted. And-
you just, if you're an officer in a firehouse and you have someone who's transitioning and they're going to start using the other bathroom,
Right.
Are you going to let people know, or are you just going to let them find out?
Oh, I love these
You
topics.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is what
And-
the radio. I
And
that's-
so
totally
now
relate to this
there
radio
you're
show.
into your confidentiality issue.
Yeah, it's like total. So you don't have really.
Right. And then you get the wise guys who say, yeah, I want to start using the girls' room too,
Yeah.
and now.
Right,
what?
identify now for the
Now
next 10
what?
minutes.
Now they're
if you
doing
will.
it like a tit for tat.
Right.
And
Yeah. And it's just a destructive spiral.
But here's the thing, it's okay, not to jump back to gender identity, but I think these issues are all over. Every time I mention it, somebody says, oh, since you last spoke, we've had somebody or, right. And again, the
Yeah,
issues
they-
are always the same.
Yeah,
right.
But
But
I
There's
love
a
that.
little bit of hope because I want to, I want you to kind of, my wife's a high school teacher and
Who is way ahead of the fire service in this issue.
they are,
Schools,
oh yeah, they
all
are.
schools
No,
gotta
absolutely,
stop.
absolutely. But I'm going to tell you, the kids she's seeing are going to be our gene pool for hiring in a few years.
Okay.
So the high school kids. But she was talking about something that has been in schools for a while now is mainstreaming special needs kids.
Okay.
And she was talking about, and I don't know how I got on this topic with her, but we were having a conversation and she said one of the special needs kids farted in class and nobody laughed. Nobody laughed. They just ignored it.
Huh.
And she said, now if the captain of the football team had done it,
Oh, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
would have been, oh my God,
Yeah.
oh, and doing all the stuff like the firehouse stuff.
Right.
Okay. But the kids today are used to seeing a diversity that
Right.
the fire service, we're not there yet.
Oh, no.
Okay. And it's almost like we're the ones that are in junior high school.
Right.
But
Perpetually.
But our
the
kids don't care.
the kids are getting to the
Agreed.
point now, and I can't imagine that you had somebody who's a special needs kid, and maybe they've got an assistant with them, somebody who's sort of watching nurse or whatever, but nobody says a thing.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that, to me, that offers us hope that the next generation of folks are going to come into our workplace maybe with a different approach to a lot of the diversity issues that we've got.
Oh,
And they're going to get that from a young age.
I remember watching Modern Family with my boys, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever. And, and the two men kiss and I, immediately like turn my head to see what the boys do. And they don't notice. I mean, it's, because nothing's different to them. So the gender identity issues, I'll tell you who hasn't gotten it. And this is the real problem, the architects. The architects who are designing these buildings have not figured out how to deal with that. I mean, my firehouse was just built, I think we finished it 3-4 years ago. It's got male bathrooms and female bathrooms. And then, when I'm like, you can't do this. Or like, well, there's a community bathroom way down the hall. I said, whoa. I said, read any of the cases. You don't get to say, you get to use this, but everyone else anyone who's transgender, you go walk down the hall, and use the community room. I said, that's not how
I think
this
that's
works.
the planning component of what your stage is, not so much the architectural design. It's like the direction there, you can build a boat instead of a firehouse and staff it. But if they don't say you need these transitional transgender bathrooms, they're not going to get put in there.
Well,
right? So
there
you need to
should just
direct.
never
And it's
be
a
any-
cost
need to
issue
direct-
too, but
Yeah.
you've got to, that's part of the cost of doing business today.
And
Right.
frankly, it's easy, everyone says, well, what's your, bottom line? I said, the bottom line is stop building community bathrooms. You have single stall, single change rooms, and that's it. Maybe there's a shower and a toilet and a changing area in each one, and put 5 of them in,
Right.
4, but whatever. But that's where we
So
are.
let's circle back to Dr. Beth
Mhm.
talking to the fire chief. I think that, you're going back to the weaponizing,
Mhm.
the psychology of, you're transgender, you're suicidal, we're going to send you to Dr. Beth, what's the expectation? And I think what she has done is admirable in directing, this is what I'm going to report if I'm actually going to take this person.
Mhm.
And if you want anything different, you may have to go somewhere else. And there's a lot of psychologists out there that'll do the chief's bidding
Mhm.
and give her a report that may be discriminatory or, it sort of dehumanizes the person's transgenderness or transitionalishness. I guess that's a word. But I think departments need to be real careful about weaponizing, even not only the psychological side, but the medical side too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people sent for IMEs or fit for duties, and the expectation is they're not fit for duty, and so they're out the door, and that's probably discriminatory.
Well, that's how Curt teaches his investigative techniques class, right? I keep seeing the dog chasing,
Dog chasing a rabbit.
dog chasing the rabbit. And I
Yeah.
think, if your conclusion is first before the investigation, if the conclusion is you're crazy, want you out. So now let's.
And now we just gotta prove it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I can't tell you, ever since I heard you say that,
Mhm.
at my conference, that I'm like, that is just the right, that's how we do investigations.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And you're right. The same thing can happen where we've got somebody, whether it's a medical issue or a psychological issue, we've already reached the conclusion,
Something's wrong.
and then we're just trying to backfill the reasoning.
Right.
So to justify what we've
Exactly.
already decided to do. And that's not, we want to recognize that in ourselves. Because I do investigations and I sense it in myself sometimes. So you got to kind of just take a step back and say, all right, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to keep an open mind. And now where are we going to go?
I'll tell you, I brought that up yesterday or 2 days ago in my class and in yours, and I said, I will never forget that one of my career lieutenants came to me with some really damning evidence about something. I'm like, oh, that person's guilty, we're going to suspend them. And I suspended the individual. I didn't talk to him. I didn't investigate because I'm smarter than that. And then you get the other side,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, oh, didn't see that coming. I guess I look like an idiot. And so, the whole investigative thing, it's such a pertinent, perfect time because boy, you just prejudge the issue and you're done. Everything that happens after you
Your
judge it.
objectivity.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, because I've been in the same boat there, is that as attorneys, we know that when somebody comes to you, they only tell you enough of a story, right?
Yeah.
We know that.
Who's
We
the first
know
person
that.
who lies to you?
Like your client, right?
Right.
You know that, and yet we fall victim to it.
Because they're paying us.
Yeah, well.
I mean, oh, you're the good guy. You got the check.
Let's change topic a little bit. We've had you talk about the pendulum swings and everything.
When you say let's change topics, have we been on one topic or that? I don't know.
So the pendulum swing to Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd issue, we're starting to see the sort of policing model, and your son is a police officer, right? So he would probably know better that in Washington state, legislation has been passed and approved by the governor to sort of have the police officers de-escalate, don't use the force so much, no tasing, no chokeholds, no, you can't pursue unless there's a probable cause or reasonable suspicion. And so what's
When
happening,
they're running, I'm going, that's probable cause, but.
I can't
Supreme Court may
run,
say
so good
otherwise,
thing I'm
so.
not a police officer. But I think what we're seeing is now the police are going, we're not doing anything. There was a case, or not a case, but an example the other day where they had a woman that was driving in the opposite way on I-5, and a police was going right, she was going southbound on a northbound lane. The cops are going by. They said, we can't stop her. She had a head-on collision with somebody. And they said, we can't chase her. So, and they didn't. And so for the EMS services or for fire guys, it's like, we go to a lot of mental health, and that's like where I think the crux is the mental health nexus again. But now the police aren't going to intervene. So now firefighters are going to be kind of on the front line of assault, and they're already there, but weapons, trying to take care of somebody who may have a mental health issue, trying to take care of somebody who may have a gunshot wound or some other trauma. And the police are like, well, we can't intervene.
But I can tell you, I read this story in the city of Rochester, New York, who apparently, it's just the other day. And I don't like the term defunded, all right, but they moved funding from the police budget and they hired a mental health crisis intervention team. And the point they made was very right. Cops are trained to take control of the situation and that you will follow my orders. Firemen are, kind of the same way. Control the situation, make sure we're safe, right? That's the first thing we're taught. It said, but mental health crisis, people undergoing a mental health crisis aren't going to succumb to well, you stand there and stop yelling and you be quiet and you listen to me. So there's a natural clash between that and the police because their training is different, not because police are bad.
Right.
And the crisis team said, the police stay over here, but this mental health crisis team will go and they de-escalate the whole thing. So it brings into question, though, not that I don't think many fire departments, EMS providers receive special training in mental health. We should.
They
right?
should.
We
Right,
should.
exactly.
But I think we tend to escalate things probably on our own before the police get there. Then the police walk in and we're like, hey, he's attacking me or, something, or I don't feel safe or, whatever. And then the police rush in. So I don't know, fire and EMS do have a role in that, in escalating this stuff.
Right. And I think part of it is training, exactly what you said, or they get into a situation where they should not even be in, like domestic violence cases or walking into somebody who has a mental crisis and you're in their house and there's no way out. Like you got like 5 guys behind you and all of a sudden you're the tip of the spear and and you're being attacked because all they're seeing is 5 uniforms walking in. Where, a person, maybe a mental health provider and an EMS provider, like in Portland, I think they have a unit like that, 1 or 2, they really cut down the number of police arrests as a result of the sort of de-escalation component. But I think so the police in our state are saying, well, we don't know how to interpret the rule. And we're going to interpret it this way. We're not going to do anything, right? The fire department's going like, holy crap, we're out there. We got to go. You don't have to go. And some of the police chiefs are saying, well, we're not going to go. We're just flat.
And I don't blame the
going.
police chiefs. I mean, they're being put in an unbelievably difficult situation.
Right. So you love this. The legislature.
No, they're going to fix all our
the people.
problems.
The people
New
said.
York, they're fixing
The
everything.
people said, well, maybe we didn't write this correctly, so it can be interpreted differently. So they're going back for a rewrite. But in the 6-month period, because they're out of session, right? In the 6 month or a year or whatever it takes to get to where they need to be, you're going to have chaos. I mean, and the question is, who's dying first? Is it an EMS responder? Is it a firefighter? Is it a citizen that was, just committed suicide? And one of the ironic things, and we talked about this, you and I did, I think, about one of the police said, well, let him commit suicide. Suicide's legal.
I said it's not.
I don't think it is legal,
It's
but
not
there's
legal.
not much you can do about it after
Right.
the fact.
You're not going to
So,
arrest the person. I
you
mean,
know.
So, but I think that's a horrible attitude, right? Suicide is legal and let them kill themselves. Well, that's not what we're all about.
But that's when you push somebody into a corner, like the police right now are off in the corner. I know in Providence, they basically shut down the police department. It's like not shut down, but I mean, they're not doing anything proactive, and homicides are up, shootings are up, stabbings are up.
right.
Yeah, every city,
And
our city.
people know it.
Seattle.
Criminals
Yeah.
know
what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
It's
It's
like,
chaos.
it's
And then Texas gives everybody a gun without a license or a permit.
Hey, yeah,
It's
what's
like,
the crime rate in
what's wrong with
Texas?
that?
So
What's
let's
yeah.
go.
wrong with that?
crime has probably went down, right?
Of course
I
it
don't know.
does. So we have a friend in southern New York, and he's a police lieutenant, and he got cut off the other day. Car ran, he's in his marked vehicle, car ran the stop sign, almost hit him. I'm like, what'd you do? He goes, let him go. I said, I'm not getting involved.
Yeah, they're not doing pursuits anymore.
They're not doing right. I don't
Lights
blame
out,
them.
light tail light out, used to, pull them over. License,
But it's an issue for the fire and EMS services.
Oh, it's a huge issue.
Right? Because
right. 'Cause
who's
they
our
don't have
backup?
to.
It's an issue for society because when
Well,
somebody's acting in a antisocial way, that person is a threat to their neighbors, to others. And so who's going to
Themselves.
deal with this? So now you're going to have neighbor on neighbor stuff going on because the police won't go, we're not
That's already
going.
happening.
Right.
And so now you have vigilantism. So that,
Mhm.
I mean, now you have society breakdown. There's
Right, the
enough
rule of laws.
countries that are in chaos. We don't need to bring chaos to the United
We
States.
can't even fill police jobs
No,
anymore.
I know, well,
I mean,
no,
the number of
the
openings.
kids don't want to be,
I don't blame them.
they don't want,
Right.
I
And
mean,
to join something where you're constantly vilified,
Right.
and you got no protection once you do act.
So I tell my clients, protect yourself. Take the de-escalation class. I'll use.
Move to Texas, get a gun.
Move to Texas, get a gun.
Kurt and
Well,
I are
that's-
there, so I
that's-
mean, you
Well,
you
same
know what
here.
side of the
I don't
aisle
have
we
to live
sit
in
on.
Texas. I'm already all right.
Right.
But I think, the situational awareness is, let's stop rushing, let's stop rushing down the roadway and red lights and siren. That already sets people off. And then situational awareness, right? And be trained in de-escalation and mental health issues.
Well, look at, was it
Yeah.
Prince? I always get it wrong. Prince Williams or Prince George's were the two firefighters of status check. They walk in, they broke in,
Mm.
forced entry, and then they get shot,
Yeah.
and then he keeps chasing them, shooting them, right? Gets convicted of murder or something. But I talked to the fire chief who's retiring right after that, just ran into him. And I said, what did you change about that? Because that's really where we are now,
Mhm.
right? Should we really be going to some of these, static
Welfare
checks,
checks,
wellness
right,
checks? And
right.
and he said, well, hey, we don't do that anymore. We don't go into the house unless we can see them, confirm, talk. Same with smoke alarms. He said they're not going into people's homes unless they can confirm a true emergency versus an alarm. And he said we changed our uniforms. We went, got away from these BDUs and police looking stuff,
Mhm.
got rid of badges. I think they went to red shirts or gray shirts, something like that. So they changed the whole culture to saying we're not going to put ourselves into that situation anymore. But maybe fire is the next step. Police were our protection. And if the police department is, not able to protect us,
We need to
I
protect
hope-
ourselves. And I agree with the uniform thing. I know that Beth and
Guns
I
for
were out to
firefighters.
dinner. We were out to dinner and we're talking about what do firefighters look like? And we look like police, right? We have all the radios, we got the badges, we got the whole 9 yards. I said, part of the de-escalation component is let's wear a different uniform.
see
That's
the guys I came on with, we were all way ahead because we just didn't want to wear our uniform. So we wear
Right.
this T-shirt or that T-shirt or,
Yeah.
wear our uniform,
like Joe's Bar and Grill and the
Yeah,
crab
right. So
shop.
we just, who's showing up in a softball uniform?
that's right.
and,
But I think we need to kind of, our whole mental component of how we respond to patients and people. And then what we look like, I think is the other thing is, and there's a lot of other issues, but I think that's probably right now, it's going to be, I think, one of our biggest crises other than the pandemic.
well, and so if you say, well, how is this a legal issue? The legal issue that's coming is workplace violence is a federal requirement.
Yep.
Right? You have to provide a safe and secure workplace, not put us into harm's way. And so maybe it forces an evaluation. What does our community look like? What can we truly do anymore? What do we have protection for out there? Are we going and doing things that aren't fire service? I mean, I don't know if wellness checks are or aren't, but certainly not breaking into people's homes.
No,
yeah.
and we've always done welfare checks because we're all hazard organization, right?
We respond to everything.
Yeah.
If
know,
the
cats
garbage
in the
man won't
trees.
pick it up, call us.
Yeah.
That's what
Call
we do.
Brad.
Yeah, call Brad.
But I think maybe
Call
that.
Saul, what's his name?
So, yeah. But I think
Also-
maybe that's where this is going. And, if the police, if the crime gets worse and the police go away, it is going to be a legal issue for the fire and EMS services.
Yeah, do we
It's gonna be
respond?
chaos. It's gonna be chaos.
And are we
It's just-
compelled to respond? Is there a mandate for fire to respond anyway? Do we have to actually provide a fire department for your community?
Some places, some
Some-
states you do.
Yeah,
states
some,
don't.
Yeah,
some
some
you
places
do,
don't.
some you don't.
Yeah.
But I think,
State
do we
by
have to
state.
respond to things? I think no. Well, special duty if you want to get back to the negligence stuff. But I mean,
Right.
I don't think we have to respond to things. Who's not going to? I get calls all the time, on the EMS side. Well, we have this person calls us 20 times a week and never pays us and, and always refuses, but taking up all our time. Do we have to respond? You know, like, well, I'd get a court order that says no,
Well,
but
that's where social workers can also come in,
Yeah,
because if you
yeah.
have somebody like that, and I think that, you know, the EMS connection there, if we can work in a social worker there to
Very nice.
address some of that, some of
Yeah, and
those
that's happening.
high demand customers.
yeah,
community.
yeah,
Well, the
yeah.
community paramedic stuff is one thing. And I think the other, the homeless population is driving up EMS calls exponentially. And to, you know, I have a guy on my doorway of my store, I can't open it up. Can you come and get him out?
Mhm.
Well, they're not gonna call the police because it takes forever to respond.
Right.
They'll call the fire department.
Not
because the
breathing
engine will
well.
go out.
Right.
Yeah, he's not breathing, or he's complaining of chest pain, or he threw up. So our guys have to go and deal with a homeless thing, and it drives up those calls, which
Yeah,
are
now we're back to
unnecessary.
mental health again. too,
Yeah, and
you know,
you can do those sort of special units that can take care of that and then cut your, you know, EMS response site.
Well, this has been a
Like
strange
that.
show. I don't know if we've discussed too many legal issues, but
No,
if
they're all
you- if
legal
you
issues.
join us, that's what you get. I don't know anything else we want to say.
You
as
get a
we
bunch of
to
crazy
the end.
lawyers that don't know what the hell they're talking
Yeah,
about until
well,
they
you
get here
know.
to talk about it.
Normally, we're hard pressed legal issues, but I think we're predicting what's to come,
Yeah.
right? If we can predict what to come, then maybe we can put in some policies that'll help change it.
Yeah, we can help change the direction and the tone and tenor of the fire service.
Mhm.
They take a look at it from an application perspective and then a legal backup, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, let's not
We're
wait for
legally
the
safe.
case to be what
Right.
spurs the change. It'll
Exactly.
occur.
Yeah.
All right, well, in that case, I think, you know, we're gonna go down to the show floor. We have a line of I think there's about 400 or 500 people waiting to get our autographs.
I see them out there
so-
waving
Yeah,
paper.
yep. So there they are. You would have no idea what it's like being a celebrity on Fire Service Court Radio. I mean, just out the door, there are just people waiting we're gonna sneak out the back. So
Now
anyway,
they know what you look like.
that's true. That's true. Well, every year, but we hold, right.
How are you gonna get by your fit test? That's what I want to know.
I'm not. So after 30 years, I decided I like it. Nicole
really?
likes it. So
Oh.
I was fit tested and then grew this.
Oh, there you go.
Still
Yeah.
beats
Yeah, good
the.
for you.
Very, very
Well, I don't know.
Abraham
Yeah,
Lincoln.
you know, that one.
Very Abraham Lincoln looking like.
So, no, I'm taking some time off. 32 years as an interior and I'm going to play lawyer. In any event, on behalf of John Murphy, Curt Varone, Brad Pinsky, and God knows where he is on vacation, Chip Comstock, we want to thank you. You should join us. We really do some really tough, hard-hitting legal issues. We've been doing this we've been doing the show for a long time.
Long time.
And we still never run out of topics. So join us, you'll love it. You know, hello and goodbye to our #1 fan, my mother.
Hello.
So for the lawyers,
The other Mrs. Pinsky.
yeah, exactly. So run the lawyers.
One more, I have very informative show from Circle City Cryogenics.
All right.
Oh,
Put the lawyers on ice. I like it. And you are our #1 fan. Remember that. It could be my mother. That's her code name, Cryogenics. So I have no idea. On behalf of all of us, join us again. Seriously, join us monthly because we really do, you know, address some tough topics. And we'll take your questions. We address them, and we always revisit our answers to see how they turn out. But if you can't listen to us, there's no one else to listen to. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon from FDIC. Brad, Curt, John. See you soon.